Welcome to our trash revolution.
I'm so upset. Oh my God.
The guy.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to TYT. I'm your host, Anna Kasparian. And if you had nothing on your mind, nothing to worry about, have no fear. We are seeing yet more threats of the use of nuclear weapons from the Israelis. And that is something that we'll get into in the first hour of the show. In the second hour of the show, right at the top, we're going to have Colonel Douglas Macgregor, someone who I've really wanted to interview on this program for quite some time. He's one of the regular guests on Colonel Daniel Davis's show. And he is a bit of a military expert, someone who can give us some updates on the alleged peace negotiations taking place between the United States and Iran. Can we finally look forward to peace on the horizon? He's going to break that down for us. But of course, there are some hard truths that we also have to be fully aware of. So he's just a really great, knowledgeable guest. I know you guys are going to enjoy that conversation. We've got great news at the top of the show, which I can't wait to share with you. And then later in the second hour, we're also going to discuss some of my favorite comedians' commentary on Joe Rogan's podcast. Tim Dillon was on Joe Rogan's podcast, and I'm gonna react to some of the clips in real time because our wonderful producer, our head producer actually, Taylor Ellis, took a listen, and he decided to grab some of the highlights for me to share with you. But we might be watching them together for the first time. So anyway, as always, if you want to help support the show, you can always do it in a free and easy way by liking and sharing the stream. You can also do so by becoming a member. Members pay a little extra for the content, but you get members only bonus episodes, certainly every Wednesday. You have access to our archives, so you can watch episodes dating back months if you'd like. And you help support our show and make us totally independent from, undue influence from corporate interests, moneyed interests. You hear us talk about Noble Mobile. That's one of our sponsors. We agree with what Noble Mobile is offering. We think it's a good company, but there aren't a lot of opportunities with us to work with a lot of companies that have a mission we agree with. So your support means the world to us. So thank you to everyone who sends in those super chats, sends in those donations, and upgrades to paid membership. You guys are the best. All right, well, I actually wanted to start off with a little bit of good news since, as we all know, news has been very heavy month after month after month. But we are starting to see a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. And that was certainly true of what went down in New York City yesterday.
It appears that, a pretty scary transformation is now fully underway in the Democratic Party.
I don't think that Israel has played a bigger role in any district any more than in this particular district. The reason why Dan Goldman is in trouble is because of the issue of Israel. He is seen by many in that district as being too pro-Israel.
Well, there was a clean sweep for every single Democratic incumbent, or Democratic candidate, I should say, who was endorsed by New York City Mayor Zoran Mamdani. Jesus, I'm so excited about this news and I'm having a difficult time even expressing it. But there was a clean sweep of every major candidate that was endorsed by New York City Mayor Zoran Mamdani, and every single one of those candidates rejected the pro-Israel, pro-Zionist messaging that we have been seeing from the vast majority of our politicians for far too long. Now, what we're talking about here are primary races, Democratic primary races, and I am very happy to see that Mamdani decided to, stick his neck out there and endorse Democrats in these primary races. And it looks like he was able to pick the right people, and his endorsement might have made a difference. But I don't think it's just about his endorsement. I really do think that what you just heard from Harry Enton in that opening video is correct. Israel did play a huge role in these races. And in fact, the reactions that you're seeing, the meltdowns that you're seeing from the Israel First crowd in the US will tell you everything you need to know about why these races played out the way that they did. Now, let's begin with Representative Dan Goldman. Goldman lost his primary, as you heard earlier. He lost that primary race in New York City's 10th district to former city comptroller Brad Lander. Now, I don't think this is relevant, but unfortunately, for the context of this story, it is relevant. Brad Lander is also Jewish, okay? It's important for you to know that so you can react appropriately to the way I present this story. So Lander, who was endorsed by Vermont's Democratic Socialist Senator Bernie Sanders, easily beat Goldman by 65.7% to 34.1% with most votes counted. So it was a total blowout. I mean, it wasn't even close, and it's good to see it. And when it comes to the incumbent, right, Goldman, it's not just that he says he supports Israel. It's about his behavior in Congress, how he decided to cast his ballots, what he chose to focus on. Both men, again, happen to be Jewish, which again is important in understanding some of the insane attacks and how insane they really are when they are directed toward Lander. Now, Lander has accused Israel, get a load of this, of genocide in Gaza. You want to know why? You want to know why Lander has accused Israel of genocide in Gaza? Because Israel has been committing genocide in Gaza. So here you have a Jewish challenger to Representative Goldman who says, hey, you know what? I'm not down with what Israel's doing. And what's going down in Gaza is a genocide. And so when you make the argument, if you happen to be one of these hardcore Zionists who makes the argument that, America is just this disgusting anti-Semitic country, and the only reason why Goldman lost is because we're just full to the brim with anti-Semites. You can't call Brad Lander an anti-Semite. It's just that he's rooted in reality and is willing to hold, Israel accountable for something that has been widely documented, okay? When you literally have organizations within Israel putting out reports admitting that what happened in Gaza and continues to happen in Gaza is a genocide, then you got to live in reality and admit that it's a genocide. Goldman, though, just kept sending the checks, voting to send more and more money, more and more military aid to Israel. So let me go back to that graphic because Goldman is a two-term incumbent and he was actually backed by the pro-Israel lobby, pro-Israel groups. And unlike Lander, Goldman was very much hyper-focused. He focused much of his energy on aiding and abetting Israel's wars and atrocities in the Middle East. As the Jewish publication Belaz notes, he had an interview with this publication. Goldman, who co-chairs the House bipartisan task force to combat anti-Semitism, has staked his campaign in part on his pro-Israel record and has warned that a Lander win could be read by the party as a green light to move further away from Israel and tolerate anti-Zionism in the left. Anti-Semitism in the left. So I think we should move farther away from Israel. In fact, a recent Pew survey found that a whopping 80% of Democratic voters have an unfavorable view of Israel. Israel is a foreign country, okay? Israel is not our mommy. Israel is not our daddy. Israel is not our responsibility. Israel is a foreign entity. So it is not in any way, shape, or form offensive to say that we should move further away from Israel. In fact, I think the safety, the security, and the future of our country literally depends on it. Now, to equate that with anti-Semitism, that tells you everything you need to know about Dan Goldman and what his actual priorities are. And I'm glad he lost last night. Now, before the election took place, Goldman had an interview with Belaz, as I mentioned earlier. This is a Jewish paper. And he said some interesting things. He says, I think the stakes are quite high in my district, which will have an impact, I think, more broadly. There's been in New York City a very aggressive move to the extreme left, and it has included a dramatic turn towards anti-Israel views and anti-Semitism. You have to keep in mind that the majority of Jewish voters casted their ballots for Zoran Mamdani. And that was seen as an increase, an explosion of anti-Semitism in the city, which should blow your mind. That is a ridiculous claim. Further, Representative Dan Goldman says, what I think is at stake is whether the Democratic Party is going to continue to abandon support for the country of Israel. I hope so. And whether there's an actual path forward for the Democratic Party to openly support anti-Semitism. No, I don't think so. I reject anti-Semitism. And you're intentionally equating the two. And guess what? Joke's on you. The people of New York didn't buy your BS. The voters in the 10th district didn't buy your BS. It's just so pathetic. Anyway, now we should actually go to a video featuring Lander himself so you get a sense of who he really is and what he really represents. Take a look.
If you had to distill it down, though, where do you think establishment and incumbent Democratic candidates went wrong here?
I mean, I think a few places. First, people taking money from corporate PACs, from Wall Street and private equity and crypto and AI and APAC. Voters are done with that. They can see through it. Second, we need to fight harder for working families against Trump, of course, but also for the billionaires and bullies and rigged system that empower him. And we can't be a party that compromises on some people's humanity. Democratic voters are saying loud and clear they don't want to pay for any more of Netanyahu's wars, and they need that change in the party.
Based. And guess what? That message resonated with voters in New York's 10th district. And so bye-bye Goldman, you're done. But it looks like the Democratic voters are in fact ready to abandon Israel, at least in New York, because there were other races that involved Mamdani endorsements. And those who were endorsed by Mamdani, those who rejected influence from the Israel lobby, were the ones who did in fact win. Assemblywoman Claire Valdez defeated Brooklyn Borough President Antonio Reynoso in the 7th district for that House seat. Now, Assemblywoman Claire Valdez, much like you're gonna notice with the trend here, was not pushing for support for Israel, was not taking pro-Israel money or money from the Israel lobby. Then you also had, and this one's even more aggressive if you ask me, you have Daria Liza Avila Chevalier, who is a doctoral student who had joined the pro-Palestinian protests at Columbia University. She won her race for New York's 13th district. Now, she defeated Representative Adriano Espilat, who was a pretty steadfast supporter of Israel in his decade in Congress, and it appears that that did cost him, and I'm happy to see it. So at Avila Chevalier's victory party on Tuesday night in Harlem, supporters chanted "Free Palestine" while she pushed her campaign's "Babies, Not Bombs" slogan. She suggested in her victory speech that her win represented a shift in how Democrats in New York would operate. And guys, even if you're not really invested in these particular races, and I gotta be honest with you, I'm not. These are the people of New York. They get to decide who they want representing them. Their leadership, sure, tangentially, to some extent, will have an impact on us depending on how they vote for federal policies. But what really stands out to me about the outcome of these particular races is the fact that you had two incumbents voted out, Democratic incumbents who are loyalists to Israel. And that communicates something pretty big to other candidates and other incumbents in the Democratic Party. When that Pew Research survey shows that 80% of Democratic voters have an unfavorable view toward Israel, that really means something. And typically, we don't see much of a response by our elected leaders, our lawmakers, when we very clearly communicate to them what we want and what we don't want. And so come election time, that's when we get to make some changes. But the changes are usually made during the primaries. You can't just wait till the general. Usually, if you wait till the general, you have two crappy options and you don't end up winning anything. So you have to get involved in the primaries to ensure that you have the best possible candidate to vote for once it goes to the general. Now, the Israel lobby has been spending pretty big on these races, as you could imagine. So the main super PAC tied to AIPAC, known as the United Democracy Project, has spent more than $25 million so far this year, in addition to at least $5 million it had funneled to create new super PACs. And they are doing that in order to kind of conceal AIPAC's money. The group started the year with more than $96 million, making it one of the best funded PACs in the country. But luckily, in this particular case, they weren't really able to make much of a difference. New York is just built different, I guess. Now, we should talk a little bit about the Zionist freakout because it was vast and entertaining, and we should have a little fun with it. So let's get into it. The fact that anti-Zionist Zoran Mamdani-backed candidates won their primary races in New York last night should come as no surprise to you if you've been keeping track on where the sentiment is among Democratic voters in regard to our relationship with Israel. Now, Democratic voters are rejecting pro-Zionist candidates, and last night in New York was a really great example of that. In fact, Harry Enton has more.
In general, how has their thinking changed on Israel?
Yeah, okay. So why are we seeing this right now in the Calcia prediction markets? Well, it's part of a broader national picture, right? I mean, just look at the change over the past few years. You know, you go back to late 2023, who Dem voters sympathized more with. It was basically an even split, but perhaps slightly more with the Israelis than the Palestinians, 34% to 31%. Look at this Israeli percentage, though. Down through the ground, look at this, now just 16%. This Palestinian percentage, about doubled. The percentage of Democrats who say they sympathize more with the Palestinians has about doubled in just 2.5 years. Look at that, from 31% to now the clear majority of Democrats now say they sympathize more with the Palestinians than the Israelis, a 60% to 16%. So a 3-point spread in favor of Israel has become what? A 44-point spread in favor of the Palestinians. And even among Jewish Democrats, the majority of Jewish Democrats say yes. 52% do believe that Israel committed genocide in Gaza compared to just 39% who say no.
Did you hear that? That last part especially. 52% of Jewish people in New York believe that Israel has committed a genocide in Gaza. Okay. So the next time some Zionist freak accuses you of being an anti-Semite, do they think 52% of Jews in New York are anti-Semites? Of course they don't. The intentional conflation of the Zionist project with the Jewish population worldwide is One of the most disgusting and genuinely anti-Semitic things I have witnessed and seen, because they are using American Jews as human shields for their treachery, for their war crimes, for their slaughter campaigns. Lumping innocent people in with that project simply because they are of Jewish identity is disgusting. But anyway, let's talk about all the losers who are freaking out about this, starting with Sean Hannity, who honestly, after the election results last night, it really did seem like he was on the verge of tears. He's literally choking up in this clip. Take a look.
Incumbent Congressman Dan Goldman, who was just banned from a New York City coffee shop because of his support for Israel. He has now lost his primary to a radical socialist backed by Mamdani. It appears that, a pretty scary transformation is now fully underway in the Democratic Party, especially in a blue state like New York.
Backed by Mamdani. You're gonna be okay? You're gonna be all right? It's gonna be okay. You're a multimillionaire, okay? You're gonna be fine. Mark Levin, of course. Mark Levin was, Mark Levin was Mark Levin. I mean, it's not really much different from his usual speed, if you will. I warned that Mamdani was more than a cancer in New York. A cancer in New York, nice. That he'd be the hub for expanding the Marxist Islamist revolution throughout the country. That's the plan, and it's working. How do you guys feel about the Marxist Islamist revolution that's making way here in the United States? Like, just total delusions, total delusions. Speaking of which, then you have Ben Shapiro, who, look, let me just decode this for you, because he likes to use the word America, but he really means Israel. He can't say Israel, he can't write Israel, but that's what he really means. Here's what he said last night. Last night, a bunch of candidates who literally despise America, he means Israel, won in New York City. Establishment Dems who live in fear of their radicalized base will cave to them. By 2028, people who hate the country of Israel and wish to destroy it could be in charge. Because here's the thing about Ben Shapiro. He hasn't explained to us, what is it about these candidates who won that makes you think they hate America? What have they said that's anti-America? They've said things that are anti-Israel. There's no question about that, which is why you're using the wrong country in your post. But since I'm calling you out on it, I could be wrong, Ben. What have they said that's anti-America? Nothing, right? The only criticism of a country that they've uttered has to do with a foreign country, the foreign country of Israel, who has dragged the United States into wars that we are now experiencing a quagmire in when it comes to Iran. We've spent $8 trillion fighting Israel's wars in the Middle East. We have shelled out over $330 billion to Israel in the form of welfare, military aid. You hate America, Ben. You prove it every day. Every single day. You tell the American people that they are not deserving of things like Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, programs that our hard-earned dollars are paid into, by the way. But Israel deserves limitless welfare. Limitless, limitless. You hate the country, Ben. It is abundantly clear. And luckily, the majority of your audience realized it, which is why they left your show. But Shapiro went on to claim that Brad Lander, who happens to be Jewish, isn't a real Jew. Take a look.
Will loudly proclaim that he is Jewish. He is Jewish only in the sense that he was born into a Jewish family. He has no relationship with Judaism. He has no relationship with the Torah. He has no relationship with Israel. He has no relationship with anything of importance to Jews. He calls himself a Jew so that he doesn't have to call himself a white guy. That's all. Brad Lander is the worst sort of human being for doing this sort of thing. And standing on the fact that you were born into a Jewish family in order to side with people who hate Jews is an amazing, amazing feat of moral depravity.
I think Ben Shapiro is a disgrace to the Jewish identity. I think he's a disgrace because what he represents is endless slaughter, destabilization of sovereign countries, the redistribution of wealth from the American people to the Israeli state. That's what Ben represents. That's what Ben is. He is a disgrace to the Jewish identity. And to run around and pretend to be the arbiter of who is and isn't worthy of the Jewish identity as a Jewish person yourself is pretty gross. Oh, he's just not the right kind of Jew, so we reject him, we purge him. You want to see, this is what I mean when I say that Zionists tend to be some of the most anti-Semitic people on the planet, not only because they love the slaughter of Semites in the Middle East, Arabs being Semites themselves, but also because they can't help but smear the hell out of the global Jewish population by making it appear as though the Zionist project is synonymous with Jewish identity. It's not. And the idea that Ben gets to reject someone's Jewish identity because they're not adequately bloodthirsty for Arab lives to be slaughtered in the Middle East or Muslims' lives to be slaughtered in the Middle East is gross. It's gross, and I'm sick of it. I'm done with it. It should be called out aggressively. Let's go to Elise Stefanik, who's a total clown. Total clown, has taken $500,000 from, according to AIPAC Tracker, has taken $500,000 from AIPAC. She responded to the election results by saying that Gotham has fallen. The mass exodus of the New York will continue apace. I call it the blue exodus. Last night's sweep of Marxist socialist candidates will further destroy New York City. The virulent anti-Semitism in these socialist campaigns is dangerous, not only to Jews, but to every American. No, doubt it. No, you're dangerous to Americans. You're dangerous to Americans, bitch. You take our money and you send it over to a country that's committing genocide and land theft. You're dangerous. You're dangerous. Whoring yourself out to a foreign country, and you have the audacity to fearmonger about red-blooded Americans winning their elections in New York? Okay, I'll give you one last one. I know we're supposed to have fun with this and I'm getting mad. Meghan McCain, she says this: to my beautiful Jewish friends in America, we love you. You are not alone. We are just as freaked out as you are and see with clear eyes exactly what is happening. What about ugly Jewish friends? Are they gonna be okay? Everyone's gonna be okay. The United States doesn't feel like it at the moment, but it's supposed to be a sovereign country. And more Americans, certainly a majority of Democratic voters, are waking up to the fact that we haven't been acting like a sovereign country. We'd like that to change. We would like to live in a world where we don't feel like we have blood in our hands because we support a genocidal foreign country. So hopefully we're gonna see more of this because we need to get the Zionists out. And yeah, I said it, we need to get the Zionists out. I will not vote for a single candidate, not by any circumstance, okay? If they are a supporter of Israel, I am a single issue voter moving forward until we get all of these people out. That's the kind of energy I'm bringing. Otherwise, what's the point? Oh, you're gonna pretend like you're gonna provide better healthcare? No, you're not. You're not gonna do jack. You're gonna send our resources to your favorite country and screw us over. And we're done with it. So keep having your meltdowns online. I promise you, I'm fully enjoying it. And there is more to come. In fact, when we come back from the break, we'll talk about some more nuclear threats from Israel. What's up, everyone? Welcome to all our new members. That includes Danger D, anonymous, another anonymous person, Kismat One, Gata Loca, You guys are awesome. I hope you guys enjoy our members only bonus episode today. We're gonna have a fun story prepared for you all. Black Mamba says, I hope you're having a wonderful day, Salt Shaman. I'm having an okay day. I'm kind of feeling under the weather, to be honest with you. And I'm just swamped. Like I just feel swamped with work. So I just barely made it in time for the show today, but we've got a great show ahead. All right, let's go to Boomer Dragon Cat, who says, I feel like we get the hard truths. It's the clown in the Oval Office that can't grasp that fact. Yeah, I mean, when we do the interview at the top of the second hour, I think that the main point is really going to emphasize that. Like the heart of that conversation is going to show you, how difficult it is for Trump to accept reality, especially when he's facing defeat. Canadian in Hawaii says, hey, Anna, any thoughts on the fact that AOC hasn't seemed to have posted on any of these wins today? At least I haven't seen her say anything. I mean, the only thing I'll say is that it's just more of the same. It's not unusual. It's not uncharacteristic of AOC at all. This is the path she has chosen. And I don't know if I said this on air or if I said it during a private conversation yesterday. She's not Zoran Mamdani. Mamdani's. Welcome back to the show, everyone. Welcome to our wonderful audience members. Love you guys so much. 00083 says Democratic leadership tears. So sweet. Or tears, you mean tears, my bad. Yeah, I mean, Democratic leadership in Congress certainly wasn't expecting the outcome that we saw in New York. And this is why I love the people. Like the people of this country will save this country. Political leadership, certainly the political leadership we currently have, they ain't gonna save anything, okay? It's up to us. And I love to see it so much. Dav Mills says, something I wish progressives understood. Property rights is the capstone of civilization. Without property rights, civilization slowly falls apart. I actually agree with you, which is why I don't think I'm a full-blown socialist, but I do think that we need to have a robust social safety net. I do think we need to have government housing for those who can't afford housing. You need to have an option. I think the best path forward is a mixed economy, and I'd like that mixed economy to be far more robust, similar to what we see in the Scandinavian model, where there is obviously private industry, but you have a robust social safety net that's protected in order to catch people when they fall. And it's worked out really well for them. But honestly, I don't know if we're even gonna have those types of conversations in good faith, those debates in good faith, if honestly, I feel like our foreign policy has consistently sucked all the energy out of the room, and we need to end that. We need to cut Pentagon funding. We need to focus on home. That's what I want to do. And Heidi says, you should be going out tonight. Your hair looks beautiful today. I had to wash it. So I literally just washed it and blow dried it right before I came on air. So thank you for the compliment. Okay, well, we've got a pretty terrifying story because for everything that we hear about how Iran is building nuclear weapons and we should be so afraid, there's another group of people who actually already have nuclear weapons, and we should be worried about what they're up to. Take a look.
You don't want to put Israel in a position where they feel they have no choice but to use those weapons. I think Israel's always been a lot closer to using nukes than any other country. I mean, we know that because they've said that. And I think they're now closer than they've ever been. So I'm not in charge of anything. I'm just a podcaster. But if I were running the US government, I would, immediately distance myself from Israel, stop paying for their genocide, of course, on moral grounds. But I would also try to calm them down, because if they get too overwrought, really destructive things could happen.
I believe that what Tucker Carlson said there, and that was in the context of an interview with Alex Jones, it was absolutely correct. One of the things that I am increasingly growing worried about, fearful about, is the notion that Israel might actually turn to nuclear weapons in order to accomplish in their minds what they need to accomplish, the total destruction of Iran or the total annihilation of any country they see as a threat. Now, unfortunately, we keep seeing more and more examples of people in Israel suggesting the use of nuclear weapons, hinting at it, maybe some innuendo, maybe sometimes just flat out saying it. And I want to give you the latest examples and refresh your memory of what a notorious traitor to the United States, Jonathan Pollard, has said on 2 separate occasions. So let's begin with the first video. And this is what everyone's been talking about on social media. The latest example is a former Hamas member turned Israeli spy. His name is Mossab Hassan, and he is a freak. Here's what he had to say at a recent conference.
Israel's existence is not negotiable, and it does not depend on superpowers or the public opinion. And if they keep pushing Israel to the corner, they are the ones who are gonna suffer the most. Israel hasn't used everything that it has. And Israel, on a purpose, did not expose the advanced weapons that it has for a very important reason. We don't want the enemy to know what we are having. And now, at this point, we're just playing around. So this is the clear message.
Okay, are you just playing around, or is this a clear message? And more importantly, if Israel is pushed into a corner, who is that a reference to? Is that a reference to Iran? Is that a reference to the United States? Because right now at this very moment, at least there's the illusion of the Trump administration for, trying to secure some sort of peace deal with Iran. We know that Israel is absolutely livid about that. And so what is Mossad talking about there? Is he suggesting to the Americans, we haven't used all of our weapons yet. Our enemies don't even know we have those weapons. We don't want our enemies. Everyone knows you guys have nuclear weapons. You guys are so stupid. They're so full of themselves and they think that they're so intelligent. Everyone knows you guys have nuclear weapons. Everyone knows that's what you were talking about here. What did the Israelis do to you to turn you from a literal Hamas fighter to now a spy for the Israelis? I mean, who knows what they did to him when they detained him, right? But anyway, you're threatening to use nuclear weapons. And just please, everyone, acknowledge the fact, because this is very important. How many times has Iran threatened to use nuclear weapons against the United States or any country? How many times? 0, right? Because they don't even have nuclear weapons. They weren't even pursuing nuclear weapons. But the fake allegation that they were building nuclear weapons was what Israel and the United States used as the excuse of attempting to topple the regime there or destabilize the country of 92 million people. 92 million people. The only country that has ever used atomic bombs, and that's us, along with Israel, which has a clandestine nuclear program and continuously threatens to use said nukes. These are the 2 countries fear-mongering about Iran's non-existent nuclear capacity and capability. We have to go in, risk the lives of our soldiers to get the nuclear dust, according to Trump. What a joke. These people are not our friends. And in fact, and this would be way more difficult than simply decoupling from Israel, which to me is the most important thing for the United States to do, decouple. But what I actually think is even more important is finding a way to denuclearize Israel, because Israel keeps talking about how they're gonna nuke people. If you don't believe me, there are more examples. In fact, Mossad loves to issue threats. He did so back in October of 2024 when he was on a panel with Cenk Uygur for Piers Morgan Uncensored. If you remember what I'm talking about, you know exactly what it is. But if you never caught this video, this is what I'm talking about.
The Iranian nuclear program is going to be destroyed. And anyone who gets in the way, it doesn't matter where they are, even if they are politicians in the West, they are going to fall, because we cannot afford. Cenk, you are are going to be defeated. You're already defeated.
Okay, Cenk, final word to you.
Did you hear what he just said? He threatened politicians in the West that if they don't agree with Israel's war against Iran, that they're going to fall. And remember, he's an Israeli agent. Are you saying that Israel will murder politicians in the West or get rid of them politically through bribery or whatever else? What do you mean the politicians in the West will fall if they don't agree to back Israel's war against Iran?
Yeah, we will not vote for them anymore.
Oh, no, well, you don't vote for them now. You're not in our country. What do you mean the politicians will fall?
We live in democracy, and we have the right to bring them up and to bring them down. Those who agree with Ayatollah, we don't want them in office. And all the sympathizers with terrorists like yourself, we don't want them even to be in our country.
Who is we, and how are you bringing down politicians in the West if they dare to defy Israel? Tell me how you're bringing them down.
I already answered you that.
Are you going to murder them or are you going to bribe them?
Yeah, he never answered the question because he got caught. He, loose lips sink ships. And I mean, he just said it and thought, yeah, not a big deal. But it is a big deal. It is a big deal. These are people who have been leeching off of the American taxpayers. And the second they might not get everything they want, they threaten nukes, they threaten to just destroy our politicians. You will fall, you will fall. That's an ally? That's an ally. And then I have people who try to come to me and make me out to be a bad guy because I loathe Israel. If you're an American citizen and you're trying to argue with me publicly on social media, and you might work with me, for instance, because you think the country that's threatening to nuke us, threatening to kill our politicians if they don't get everything they want, you're the problem. You're the problem. Now let's get back to Jonathan Pollard. I've shown you these videos before, at least one of them, because Jonathan Pollard was a traitor to the United States. He was US born, worked for our CIA. And in the 1980s, it turns out he was selling our nuclear secrets to the Israelis. The Israelis also shared some of that information with the Soviets, who were considered our enemies at the time. He served 20 years in prison. Unfortunately, Obama moronically paroled him. And then Trump comes into office and Trump is like, yeah, you want to go to Israel? Okay, Israeli donors gave me a ton of money. Sure, buddy. There's the Adelson jet. So you can go ahead and fly to Israel in style. And ever since he's been there, he runs his mouth about all the terrible things that should be done to the United States, which is why I think he should have been executed. Unfortunately, he wasn't. I think traitors to the United States should be executed. Because if you don't, they're gonna run off to a foreign country and say garbage like what you're about to hear. So this is a video featuring Jonathan Pollard, who again has threatened to use Israel's nuclear weapons against both us and Iran. Take a look.
For the United States and the West, nuclear weapons at any level, tactical, strategic, EMPs, whatever, are viewed as something that should only be used as a last resort. And even then, very carefully, on an escalation ladder, as they say. With me, I don't care if you start throwing nukes immediately, responsibly, but immediately. And a case that I've been pushing is the use of an electromagnetic pulse weapon or weapons against Iran. Why are we waiting to get hit?
Why are we waiting to get hit? We can use preemptive nukes. We should do preemptive nukes. He's a freaking psychopath. These people are the most dangerous people in the world. And I'm not exaggerating. There's one country that is consistently threatening to use nukes, and not just use nukes against us. Use nukes against us. And it's the country that we are shelling out endless money to. It's the country that we went into a tremendous amount of federal debt for. Our country's dying for Israel. But he's not done. In a different interview, he suggested using nukes against the United States. Take a look at that.
Well, I believe that the Biden administration, as I called it, did threaten us. But I said, you're mistaken if you think there's never a choice. There was a choice. He said, well, what? Is it to have our weapons cut off? I said, no, let me bring you back to October 1973 during the Yom Kippur War when Henry Kissinger instituted an arms embargo against us. He stopped the aerial resupply of our army at that point to extract diplomatic concessions from us. And what happened? What happened was an A-4 Skyhawk was parked at Tel Nof Air Base with some interesting weapons under its wings. And we told the Americans, take your eye in the sky and take a good look at the airplane that's on that runway. And the next day, the airlift started. So the guy that I was talking...
Which airlift?
To Israel. The arms airlift.
So in other words, we threatened their...
We threatened to use unconventional weapons. I'll leave it at that.
Threatened to use nukes against the United States. Threatened to use nukes against the United States. These are not our allies. This has nothing to do with Jewish religion, Jewish identity. I don't give a damn about that. I couldn't care less. I really couldn't. Like, it's like the most narcissistic thing in the world to think I'm sitting around obsessing over someone's identity. I don't care at all. What I care about is a foreign country sucking up our resources, committing genocide, committing ethnic cleansing, having blood on our hands because we aid and abet it, we fund it. And then after all of that, they have the audacity to threaten us with nukes. Where does Judaism come into that? It doesn't. But the Zionists know that. They know that. They like using Jewish people as human shields for their treachery. And it's not gonna work with me. You can call me whatever you want, anything you want. I know the difference between right and wrong. And what you just saw on your screens is as wrong as it gets. We gotta take a break. When we come back, we'll give you some updates on why Trump has chosen not to sign legislation that's supposed to do something about our housing crisis. Come right back. All right, these breaks are way too short, but I'm gonna go ahead and read as much as I can. We've got Shelley, who says, spot on, Anna, cook girl cook. I don't know what I was cooking, but I'll definitely keep cooking. Thank you. We've got MG2645 who says, read Ryan Grimm's article today about Epstein. Ooh, I missed it. I haven't seen it yet. Thank you for that tip. I'll definitely take a look at that. Multi-Phoenix 30 says, Anna, you are a genius. Most Semites are not Jews and certainly not Zionists. Yeah, I mean, the rebranding of Semites has been pretty effective. I gotta hand it to them. Ricky Rage Dorazio says, Anna, thank you for saying that Arabs are also Semitic. A lot of people don't know that. But again, it's just, there's so much, the strategy of that has been deployed by, Jewish Zionists has been so effective. Like, it's just been so effective. Like, literally erasing Arabs from their Semite identity is kind of, I don't know how they pulled it off, but they did. I'll do a better job in reminding people as we cover these types of stories, though. Thank you to Lee Middleton, who gifted 5 TYT memberships, and welcome to our new members. Dean Lofgren writes it and says, nice hair, Anna, thank you.
Beautiful hair.
He had 6 fingers on his toes. All right, we gotta get back to the show. What's up, everyone? Summer's here, and that might mean you want to save some money so you can do fun things. So why not save money on your phone bill? In fact, Noble Mobile is offering your first 3 months for free. And then on top of that, they pay you back for any data you do not use each month. So if you want to learn more, just go to tyt.com/switch. That's tyt.com/switch. All right, well, something curious happened today that I wanted to look into. And then I wanted to share the information with you because I'm sure many of you are struggling with housing costs. Housing is extremely expensive in the United States, whether you're looking to buy or if you're looking for a place to rent. And shockingly, Congress was trying to do something about it, but now Trump is standing in the way. Why? Here are the details. President Donald Trump was set to sign a bipartisan housing bill. That was supposed to happen this morning, but it didn't happen this morning, even though Americans are having a hard time coping with insanely expensive housing costs. Now, rather than sign the bill into law, he has decided to hold the American people hostage. And it's all because little baby isn't getting everything he wants right away. Now, let me explain. He announced that he will not sign the housing bill until Congress passes the Save America Act, because he insists that our elections are broken, they're not secure. You know, he still can't get over 2020. He's still claiming that the election was stolen from him. So here's what he wrote on Truth Social. The Elizabeth Pocahontas Warren-centric housing bill, which is of minor importance. He's a piece of crap. He really is. Like, let's just pause for a second and really acknowledge how little this person gives a crap about the people he signed up to represent. Oh, it's not that important. It's not that important. Okay, you're garbage, but I'll continue with what he had to say. Is of minor importance compared to lower interest rates and even FISA, pales in comparison to passing the Save America Act. That is what Americans, both Democrats, Republicans, and everyone else care about. Get the bad Republicans to approve it, or better yet, terminate the filibuster and approve it. And everything else Republicans have ever dreamed of, the Democrats will do it in hour one, 100%. Okay, well, joke's on you, Trump. The Democrats don't do anything either. Okay, Congress is usually trash, which is why this story didn't even hit my radar at all, because I'm like, there's no way members of Congress are working on a housing bill. A housing bill? Really? And it passed both chambers? What? Now, Republicans, he says, will feel very stupid if they don't do it first. Okay. He also says that today's housing news conference and signing is hereby canceled until such time as we pass the desperately needed Save America Act, which I consider to be a national emergency. Okay, we've got plenty of national emergencies. This, in my opinion, is not really one of them. And if you consider it a national emergency, you got to admit that the inability to afford life is a little more important than, doing what Trump thinks we need to do to protect our election from like widespread fraud that doesn't exist. So let's talk about what you need to know in regard to the Save America Act. So the Save America Act has two key provisions. Now, one is that all Americans would need proof of citizenship in order to register to vote. Okay, I mean, yes, that already happens, but sure, if you want to bolster it even more, okay. I will do anything to stop having this stupid debate. Okay, fine. You want me to prove my citizenship? Fine. Okay, just shut the F up and let's move the F on. I'm so sick of it. This has been coming up again and again and again by the Republicans since 2008. Since 2008. It makes me want to blow my brains out. Okay, I'm so sick of the same BS debate. Okay, 2, Americans would need to present a photo ID when they vote. Okay, fine. I have no problem with that. Great. It's going to be a little more difficult for students out of state. They're going to have to get, a state issued license or ID card, whatever, but just do it. Please, please, please. Let's move on. But Trump decided to muddy the waters, which is why the Save America Act isn't passing. Because he decided, I care so much about election integrity, which is why I'm going to add other provisions that have nothing to do with election integrity, like a ban on trans men and women's sports. Didn't you already do that? Didn't you already do that through executive order? And what does this have to do with election integrity? Like Republicans, I'm sorry, they are the ones who are obsessed with the transgender issue. They are the ones who will find any nook and cranny of our political debates and policy discussions to talk about the trans issue. They're the ones who bring it up. Okay, another one. A ban on gender affirming care for minors. What does this have to do with election integrity? If you care about election integrity so much and you want to get the Save America Act passed, why are you purposefully insisting on injecting transgender related policy into it? He also wants heavy restrictions on mail-in voting. And that is a legitimate debate that's happening in the country. I like mail-in voting. I think mail-in voting is a good thing. I think there are issues with some ballot harvesting in some states. I actually do think that there are good arguments made against it. It depends on how that policy is carried out, because remember, elections are determined by the states, or how those elections are carried out, determined by the states. And I have seen instances of, questionable behavior that unfortunately is considered legal in regard to ballot harvesting that I don't think should be legal. But nonetheless, I mean, when it comes to the Senate, as we all know, there's a legislative filibuster which requires 60 senators to vote in favor of something in order for that bill to pass. The Save America Act didn't pass the Senate. And what made it impossible to pass in the Senate are the random transgender provisions that Trump insisted on. So Senate Republicans have tried and failed to pass the Save America Act. There aren't enough Democrats who support those policies to get it over that 60 vote threshold. And the Save America Act cannot pass, through the reconciliation process, which would only require a simple 51 vote majority, because this has nothing to do with our budget. Right? Those are usually over budgetary concerns or issues. So sure enough, the Senate parliamentarian has ruled that the Save America Act could not be put out as a reconciliation bill that would only require a 51-person vote. Okay, so let's talk about the housing bill that Trump is refusing to sign. So Trump is refusing to sign this bill that passed with shockingly overwhelming bipartisan support, which makes me worry. But just on a surface level read, there are some good things, and it's better than nothing. I mean, when it comes to our Congress and how pathetic and feckless they are, better than nothing. But here's what we know about it. It passed in the House 358 to 32, also passed in the Senate 85-5. And here's a breakdown per More Perfect Union. This bill would limit the institutional ownership of housing, meaning corporate landlords or hedge funds or other large for-profit entities would be able to own no more than 350 homes. Oh, wow, yay, that sounds great. 350 homes. Okay, I think that's weak sauce, in my opinion. No one should own 350 homes. It's going to remove some regulatory barriers and streamlining environmental reviews to increase development of affordable housing. I think that's good. It depends on how it's carried out, but I do think that's good. I do think in some states, especially, there are regulatory concerns that are making it difficult to build new housing, which we need. Updating requirements to expand manufactured housing production. There was a big boom in that regard back in the 50s and 60s. Those are many of the houses we live in today. And we should maybe reconsider going back to that. Creating an innovation fund for communities to build more housing supply, establishing better community banking and loan options, supporting housing opportunities for veterans, permanently authorizing a major disaster recovery program. Okay, look, what I like about the provisions here is that many of them are focused on increasing housing supply, which is the biggest issue we have right now. We don't have enough housing. So here it is, they're doing something. I can't believe it passed both chambers, makes its way to Trump, and Trump's like, no, I want the Save Act to pass. So what happens next? Well, according to the Wall Street Journal, under the Constitution, a bill passed by Congress becomes a law in about 2 weeks if the president doesn't sign or veto the measure. So the real question is, Trump hasn't signed it, but Is he going to veto it? If he doesn't veto it and still refuses to sign it, doesn't matter. Apparently it becomes law within 2 weeks or after 2 weeks. The GOP-controlled Congress could also delay sending the bill to the White House indefinitely. So look, the American economy is absolutely struggling. The cost of living has really shot up. We did not see any relief after Trump got elected. In fact, inflation has only gotten worse. First, due to the ham-handed way that he rolled out his Liberation Day tariffs, which was a disaster. And then after that, of course, the war against Iran led to the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, a major choke point for energy, for fertilizer that our farmers need in order to grow food, for urea, all sorts of things that we desperately need. And so we see the cost of everything going up. Gas prices are fluctuating, but they're still very high. And they fluctuate based on what I think is manipulation from President Trump. So Trump said that the housing affordability bill was of minor importance. So here's a headline of minor importance for you. The income needed to buy a home has nearly doubled since 2020. And that's according to a new Harvard University report. Both new and existing homes now carry median prices above $400,000. Existing home prices have climbed 54% since 2020, far outpacing wage growth during the same period. Existing homes now cost roughly 5 times the median household income, a dramatic increase from the ratio of about 3 times the income needed that prevailed throughout much of the 1990s. So what exactly is driving that change? Like what's going on here with the housing market? Well, this report found that the monthly payment on a median priced home rose from roughly $1,700 in early 2020 to approximately $3,100 by late 2025. But if you can believe it, the numbers actually do get worse. I'm gonna just show you one more graphic because it's important to know about this. So this is a Wall Street Journal graphic. They put this together and I wanna explain what you're looking at. This is data showing how every aspect of owning a home is getting more costly, more expensive. That includes mortgage payments, insurance to insure your home maintenance. So in total, the annual cost of owning a home has already increased by 39% from 2019 to 2025. And that outpaces overall inflation over that period, obviously. But hey, President Donald Trump says it's a minor issue. I need you to pass a bill that randomly has anti-trans provisions in it. Anyway. Do with that information what you will. Our government is a joke. Our government is a joke. You don't hate our government enough. Okay. When we come back, we will have a fantastic discussion with Colonel Douglas Macgregor. We'll talk about the Iran war, how these peace talks are going. He made some, provocative comments lately about his feelings of Trump potentially being under duress in this whole scenario. So we'll have him on. Don't miss it. We'll be right back.
I love cows. Indisputable is still the fastest growing news show in America compared to CNN, Fox News, and 30 other networks. We tell the truth on Indisputable because the truth is indisputable. We go places that other news media outlets refuse to go. When there were human rights abuses happening at the Victorville prison, guards and members of the community contacted us.
You, through your investigative reporting, unearthed very troubling allegations about specific forms of abuse and discrimination in the federal prison system.
It really doesn't take much to be a trusted voice. All it takes is to be fearless, report on matters, be an advocate. I called it the bullpen intentionally because it's a place of preparation. We present individuals who may have an opposing view, so we debate. Sometimes we interview individuals because their stories deserve to be heard. A survivor of significant police misconduct and his attorney We covered this story earlier, and to remind you of the horror of one man being shot at damn near 100 times by the police. We take time on this show to showcase the temper tantrums of Karens in the wild. We do this not because we want to see people's emotional outbursts in public, but because these incidents are emblematic of a bigger societal issue taking place across the nation, and it has to be checked.
My friend, my big homie, attorney at law, Benjamin Crump.
I just want to thank you, man. Educated, articulate brothers like yourself speak truth to power. It makes a great difference in changing the landscape in America. So
listen, no matter what you do, don't allow the politics of ideology to evaporate the soul that still exists inside of you. They don't stop, I don't stop. Racism won't stop, I won't stop. Systemic bias won't stop, I won't stop. People still need health care, so I won't stop. People still need criminal justice systems reform, so I won't stop. You won't stop either.
I'm wearing one of our pieces of merchandise. So the funny thing about the Dragon Squad, and that's what our viewers call themselves. That's the name of the group, but every individual chooses their own name. You might have Cincinnati Dragon. You might have Harry Potter Dragon. We have a Grandma Sunshine Dragon is one of those that I remember. These are people that like to have an element of themselves, their lives, what's significant to them reflected as a part of the community. But the concept of the Dragon Squad is just something I threw away as a joke. I was mocking the Proud Boys, these like right-wing groups that come up with a name for themselves that they think is cool, but it's actually really lame. And I thought, off the top of my head, I can come up with something that's still kind of lame, but much cooler. And so I threw out Dragon Squad, and I just moved on with my life. But everybody liked it, and so they kept it going, and so we've embraced it. And I think again, this was during the period of the pandemic. I think it was sort of nice to have a renewed sense of community, a feeling that you're a part of something when everything seems so chaotic. And as a result of that, we've got independent artists online streaming, making beautiful digital art of dragons. We've got, we've released a number of pieces of merchandise that people love sending us photos of them. And then, by the way, for me personally, people send me, like you can probably see in the background, like a knitted dragon someone sent me. There's a dragon book they sent me, dragon board games they send me. People have done like custom ironworks, making dragon bottle openers. Like the fans are super invested in diamond art and things like that. And so it's great that they send this stuff. Sometime we're gonna have to set up a wall of all of it. But yeah, it's definitely brought the community a lot closer together. The fact that we were no longer in this big studio, I felt a lot more personally attached to people. It felt very immediate. And I know that I personally needed the connection.
Welcome back to TYT, everyone. If you noticed, we didn't really cover much of the Iran war in the first hour. And I really wanted to save that to speak with our wonderful guests. So joining us now to give us an update on where things are headed or where things stand with Iran is Colonel Douglas Macgregor. Colonel Douglas Macgregor served as the senior advisor to the Secretary of Defense in Trump's first administration. And about 3 months later, he was appointed to the board of the US Military Academy. And his commentary, his analysis has been very valuable to me personally. He has a new Substack piece out that I highly recommend reading. It's titled Judgment Day for Trump's War, A Path to Peace Begins by Shaking Up the Pentagon. Douglas, thank you so much for joining us.
Happy to be here. One truth in advertising, the West Point Board of Visitors fired me almost instantly after Trump failed to win the election. So
Biden let you go.
I never joined.
Well, I gotta say, I'm a little disappointed that your advice isn't at all being listened to in the Trump administration right now, because I listened to your conversations with Danny Davis. I listened to your conversations with Mario Nawfal, and you know what's going on, and you understand our military limitations when it comes to this war against Iran. And had Trump listened to people like you, I don't think he would have entered that war. And now we find ourselves in a quagmire. But I'm a very cynical person at this point because we've gone back and forth with these alleged peace talks. I'm surprised that we haven't attacked Iran again in the middle of peace negotiations. We seem to have a knack for that. But I do want to get a sense of where you stand on this. Do you think there's a genuine good faith effort by the US government to secure a peace deal?
It's difficult for me to say that. I'm sure that President Trump would like to see something emerge from this, but he may be alone in his wishes, which is part of the problem. The second thing is this has nothing to do right now with peace negotiations. This is all a memorandum of understanding whose real purpose is to get to the point where we can fully open the Strait of Hormuz. Everybody, of course, forgets that the Strait of Hormuz was open and there was no problem until we attacked Iran. But for some reason, people seem to think that we should now begin the attacking again here in Washington in order to open that strait because the evil Iranians are responsible for this. That's a lot of nonsense, but there are a lot of people in Washington with lots of illusions. And that's one of the reasons I wrote what I did.
Well, speaking of one of the individuals who seems to be completely delusional is Senator Lindsey Graham, who just this week had alleged or had given Trump the advice on Fox News that the right course of action is to militarily take control of the Strait of Hormuz. And okay, I want you to answer two things. Number one, explain why that's not possible. But secondly, do you think Lindsey Graham knows that it's not possible, or is he really this stupid?
Well, I don't think Lindsey Graham is stupid. None of the people that you're listening to in Washington are necessarily stupid. You have to look at where their money comes from. And if you understand where the contributions to his continued presence in office are coming from, then you understand the positions he takes. And that's why he's 199.9% with AIPAC and the Israel lobby. So I would just dismiss that part. The first question is a very important one. No, we are not equipped militarily right now to seize control of the strait. Very few people have looked at the geography. It is extremely tough, very difficult to deal with. But beyond that, Iran has mastered something that we saw emerge in eastern Ukraine. We watched the Russians demonstrate it, but we don't seem to have paid any attention to it. And what the Iranians have done is that they have linked space-based surveillance, persistent surveillance, constant surveillance, with all the intelligence and reconnaissance platforms at their disposal to provide instantaneous targeting data to a multitude of weapon systems, mostly theater ballistic missiles, tactical ballistic missiles, all kinds of unmanned systems, anything that falls into the category of unmanned or standoff attack, to the point where anything that moves within 300, 400, 500 miles of the Iranian border is going to be picked up, monitored, tracked, and if necessarily targeted and destroyed. And this is the problem. It's not a question of, can you break through something and get there? No, you can't. If you try to sail a ship through this thing, you're going to be hit by multiple tactical ballistic missiles and probably lots of unmanned systems. You'll either be neutralized or sunk. We don't necessarily want to go through that catharsis, and so we've been unwilling to try and force our way through the strait. If you try to use ground forces, can you get them in there? Well, then you have to go through the air defense system, which has gotten increasingly better, far more lethal now and capable than it was at the beginning. And what are you going to do with it? Well, take islands, seize the city of 250,000 people in Bandar Abbas inside the Gulf. It's not going to do you much good. It's going to be a miserable experience, and you're probably going to get everybody killed. If they do get in there at all and are not shot out of the sky or shot out of the ocean on their way in, then they're going to be annihilated once they land. I think these things have been made clear to President Trump, but these things are not understood in Washington. And so lots of people are very angry. I mean, remember, we're the greatest country in the world. We have the greatest armed forces in the world that were all rebuilt just a few years ago, remember? Which is, of course, absurd. It takes 10 years to build an army, to build a Navy, 20 to 30. Who are we kidding? That's nonsense. We're dealing with legacy forces that have been with us really all through the Cold War, certainly over the last 30 years. So this is the wrong force for the mission. And it's not a question of don't we have good soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines? Of course, that's not the issue. It's the wrong force for the wrong mission in the wrong place at the wrong time.
What is your, evaluation of Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth's conduct throughout this war in Iran?
Well, let me back up and just say that if you read the Substack, what I try to get across to people is that even though we understand that President Trump's the commander in chief, he's ultimately responsible for whatever does or doesn't happen, he's not alone. He doesn't reach these conclusions or decisions on his own. There has been a tendency to blame the Israelis. Well, the Israelis had an agenda to drag us into a major war so that we would destroy Iran for them. Gosh, what a shock. Are you going to believe whatever they tell you? Only if you're very stupid. So I think that probably President Trump believed some of it, but I think he turned to his inner circle, and I think he turned to his Secretary of War. He turned to the director of the CIA. He turned to the senior military advisor to the president, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Kane. There are others he probably consulted, but those are the ones that I would think he would talk to. They must have said something about it. They must have expressed an opinion. My impression is they said, go for it, boss. And that's what's gotten us into this mess.
Yeah, and it is a quagmire. You're absolutely right. The Strait of Hormuz was open prior to this war. And now it's kind of typical of Trump. He tends to break things, and then if he succeeds in gluing it back together, he expects a pat on the back. But in this case, it seems unlikely that he's going to be able to glue it back together, because right now, as we speak, Iran and Oman are formalizing their plan for how they'll charge for transit through the Strait of Hormuz. So I don't think toll-free transit is in our future anytime soon. At the same time, the other issue here, you mentioned Israel and all the blame that's being put on Israel. I think a lot of that blame is well-deserved, especially when clearly the United States and Israel have different objectives here. I don't think we should have really had any bad relations with Iran, to be quite honest with you. Israel wants to be the dominant power in the region. They don't want to be checked by Iran or its proxies. They want to topple that regime or create a failed state. Now, that's not going to happen. But Israel insists on continuing the war. They want to see more kinetic action against Iran, but they want that knowing full well that they themselves are running out of missile interceptors. The United States has depleted its, weapons and interceptors as well. So surely Benjamin Netanyahu and the Knesset knows what's actually going on. So what are they really trying to do here? Let's say the war begins again. And Iran is, shooting missiles in Israel's direction. They're running out of interceptors. Why would they want that? What do you think is happening here?
Well, keep in mind that first of all, the so-called Israel lobby, which consists of something much larger and more powerful than the simple lobby that we talk about, which is a few people and some think tanks in Washington. You're talking about people with billions of dollars. Mm-hmm. And they have been purchasing politicians for 30 plus years. And they have poured a lot of money into politicians. And now they expect the politicians to perform. That's number one. We paid for you, we found you, we put you in office. Now you're going to do what we want. And we want the Greater Israel Project. Now, the Greater Israel Project is seen on a map, supposedly territorial conquest, but it's also part of making Israel the financial center of the world. So you're talking about international Jewish financial power, which is really behind everything and is driving everything. And it got control of the British Empire. When the British Empire ceased to be a major power, it got control of us. And right now they control Washington, which is what they want. And the United States Armed Forces are at their beck and call. All you have to do is go back over the last 10 years and look at all the CENTCOM commanders who made the little pilgrimage over to the Foundation for the Defense of Democracy and got on the stage there as 3-stars, sometimes earlier, to pay homage to Israel and declare their readiness to destroy the enemies of mankind, which are equated to the enemies of Israel. So all of these things are bound up together. So we have a strong Israel first problem in the very senior ranks of the US Armed Forces. And now you mentioned Hegseth. Hegseth, of course, I'm told, is being among the most vocal supporters of all this. And he and apparently our friend, the CIA director, have both said, no, we have to keep bombing, keep bombing. And of course, the Air Force has always taken the position, if you bomb long enough, you'll win.
That's crazy. No.
It's not an answer, and it's really not what we want to do. And when people bring up World War II, I always look at them and say, we firebombed the Japanese. We firebombed the Germans. We killed billions of people that didn't need to die. In fact, Curtis LeMay, who was the architect of the whole thing, turned to his staff in August of 1945 and said, well, we better win this war because, if we don't, we'll all be tried as war criminals. I don't think that's what we want to do anymore. Now, let's give Donald Trump some credit, okay? He said when he was in Versailles, something that was very true. If we don't get this straight open, we could slide into a global depression. Correct. He is absolutely right. And we have been emptying our own strategic petroleum reserve, pouring it into other countries as well as into our own, and try to keep the price of oil low. We're about to run out of that flexibility over the next few weeks. So one would think under the circumstances, it would be a tremendous sense of urgency. But he's got a problem. It's Israel. And you said, well, why would Israel want to put itself through this, terrible experience? Well, this is about Israel's survival now. This is an extinction level event. If they don't win this war, if Iran is not destroyed, if it is not fragmented, divided, disintegrated, which after all is the same plan that we had for Zelensky and Russia, divide it up, break it up, destroy it, make it, essentially whatever we want it to be. That failed in Ukraine. Now they're trying it in the Middle East. If it doesn't succeed and the war should end and we walk, what happens to Israel?
They use a nuke?
Well, that's a very dangerous thing to do because they're dealing with other partners, or not partners, but states in the region that have access to nuclear weapons. The Turks have always known that if they needed a nuclear weapon, they could get it from Pakistan. And I think the Pakis have been very, very straightforward about saying to the Iranians, if you need this, we'll provide it. Now, I can't prove that, but I rather suspect that's the case. I think the Islamic world is largely united now in its opposition and resistance to Israel. Who are the people that are standouts or not following in this? Well, the UAE is aligned with Israel and us. They're still trying to murder people in Gaza. They don't give a damn what happens to people in Gaza, which you would think under normal circumstances as fellow Arabs and Muslims, they would care. They don't. Saudi Arabia, well, Saudi Arabia is usually on all sides of all issues. But the bottom line is that none of the Arab states have any real military power. They have financial power. And right now, you've got the Qataris and the Saudis working very hard behind the scenes to assure the Iranians they will get their money. We're not doing that. They are. And remember, we're not talking to them. We're not talking to the Iranians. We exchange notes, but that's it. There's no face-to-face discussion. So I don't hold out much hope for an agreement. And that's why in the paper that I wrote, I said, there is a way to solve this. It's a military solution. Leave.
Yeah.
Out. And the sooner we get out, the better, because the longer we're there, the more likely we are to be dragged back in. And that could result in catastrophe.
I agree with you. I agree that leaving is the best option for the United States. I don't think that we're going to get some sort of deal with Iran to open the Strait of Hormuz anytime soon. But maybe we could, later down the line, diplomatically make some sort of deal with them. The issue is, if we were to leave, let's say, and Israel intends to continue the Gazification of Lebanon. That's really what's going on in Lebanon. They intend to annex the southern half, if not more. And really the only resistance to the IDF that we've seen is Hezbollah. And actually, I would love to get your comment on how Hezbollah has been, conducting their own resistance against Israeli aggression. They have these incredibly cheaply made drones that are really starting to do some damage. But nonetheless, Israel seems pretty hell-bent on continuing their operations in Lebanon. Iran has made clear, crystal clear, that any deal would require an end to all warfare, including in Lebanon. What happens if, let's say, the United States pulls out entirely? Lebanon continues getting battered by Israel's bombs and its forces. If Iran responds and retaliates against Israel, would the United States just stand by, or would we just get dragged into this again?
Well, that's a $60,000 question. That's why I think we should disengage and make it abundantly clear to everyone that we're leaving. I think we need to abandon this notion of ever going back into the Gulf, because there's no way we can protect those countries. That's been clearly demonstrated. One of the things we need to do globally, not just in the Persian Gulf, is get people to get along with their neighbors. You know, there's the Estonians, Latvians, Lithuanians would love to drag us into a war with Russia. They would love to play the Israeli role. We got to get out of this business of the tail wagging the dog. We have too many relationships like that. But there's something else that we need to keep in mind, and that is who has dominated this region of the world for most of the last 500 years. It's a trick question.
I mean,
come on, Anna, you know the answer.
I'm supposed to say the United States, but I feel like it's not. Okay, go ahead.
There are two states over the last 500 years.
The US and Israel?
Persia and Turkey.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
Israel's only a little more than 70 years old. Israel is regarded by everyone as an artificial construct. In fact, that's the way most people view the statelets in the Persian Gulf. These are artificial constructs, the creatures of British imperialism. What is Sykes-Picot? Created these creatures of British imperialism. Everyone in the region, if you talk to the elites, if you can get in to talk to them, they'll all say the same thing. Sykes-Picot is over. Well, if it's over and we leave, who runs the place? Ankara and Tehran. Now, they've already cooperated against the Kurds, and they're quite willing to cooperate in the future against the Kurds and others in Iraq. Northern Iraq was part of the Ottoman Empire. The Turks want Northern Iraq. What's in Northern Iraq? Oil. And what happens to Kuwait? What is this thing called Kuwait? Was there a Kuwait 500 years ago? No. It was either under Persian administration or Ottoman administration. What I'm trying to get across is whenever we go anywhere, Anna, we just temporarily distort the normal dynamics of the region. Now, I'm not saying that Turkish armies are going to mobilize and march all over North Africa and all over the Middle East. That's not my point. My point is they are the natural dominant powers. We are not. We do not live there. Israel is an artificial construct. And for that reason, its founders were much more cautious than the people who are currently running Israel. They saw the boundaries, they understood the limitations of their power, and they did not delude themselves into believing that they could control the United States, its military power in perpetuity. Now, right now, you and I know that in the United States, the polls have shifted decisively against the Israelis. So why is the Hill paying attention to anything the Israelis want? Is this not a republic? Is this democracy? I guess we've answered that question. It isn't. The people in Washington are not responsive to the American people.
Well, to that point, I really question this whole notion. I don't question it. I actually firmly believe in the notion of the deep state. People who are making decisions, unelected individuals, career operatives within various agencies of our government, making decisions sometimes without the president knowing, without the commander in chief knowing. Like, I want to know just how much agency the commander in chief really has under this system.
Well, that's a legitimate question. That's a legitimate question. And the truth is that it's limited. Presidents usually have about 18 months during which, in the beginning of an administration, when they have real support on the Hill and they can achieve perhaps 2 to 3 critical objectives, then it's over. And you're basically fighting a rear guard action and working on re-election. Well, these are different times now. This is much worse now for Donald Trump. It's not just the phone rings and Miriam Adelson is there, or Larry Ellison or Paul Singer or somebody else. That's part of it. What about the Hill? Now, they just had this resolution some sort of a sense of the Senate, sense in the House said, oh, this is bad. We think you should pull the troops out. But did they vote on pulling anybody out? Of course not.
No.
They're not going to pull anybody out. Their paymasters have told them, have to stay here in perpetuity. The short time I was in the building, I kept saying, what are we doing in Syria? We got to get out. We got to get out of northern Iraq. President Trump wanted to pull the troops out at the time. And I kept pushing around the Pentagon. And finally, people said, don't you understand? We have to be there for Israel.
I knew it. Yeah, no, of course.
I said, why?
We have to literally arm al-Qaeda terrorists in order to topple Bashar al-Assad, our enemies, supposedly. Like, what? Crazy.
Which smart Israelis knew was a serious mistake. We forced Syria out of Lebanon. And this is back in 2000, 2001. Shortly after that, we drove the Syrians out. And there were several very smart Israeli analysts who said, don't do this. The Syrians provide stability over there. Leave them there. I mean, the Israelis themselves have been the authors of their own destruction. Remember, they created Hamas.
Yes.
Hezbollah didn't exist until they went into Lebanon and stayed. You know, we don't go over these things. And then we never mention the Iran-Iraq war and how many hundreds of thousands of Iranians died in that because we funded it and supported it. Saddam Hussein was our man on the scene.
That's right. That's right.
It's all insane. This thing has got to end. We have got to get out.
We have to get out. And, you know, I've heard you talk about how much of a threat Israel is to itself and its own existence. But I don't care about that as much as I care about our own country and how much of a threat we might be under. Now, I'm not necessarily worried about our national security at this moment. However, what has transpired through the course of this incredibly moronic war in Iran is we have revealed ourselves as a country with a military that is depleted, right? That we don't have the capacity or capability to beat Iran. I feel that that is a scary place to find ourselves in. And so if it continues, if we continue going down this path, I don't think it makes us safer in any way, shape, or form. I actually think it makes us less safe.
No, whenever you commit your military power to action and it fails, and in this particular case, it didn't fail for any reason other than, as I said at the beginning, it was the wrong force for the wrong place at the wrong time. And you don't take really heavy casualties because we've taken casualties, but we haven't had to take really heavy ones. The smart move is get out, back up. Wait a minute, look, things have changed. We need a different force. We've got to go back and re-examine everything. This is not the time to extend the war. Now, hopefully somebody in the Department of Defense is saying these things, though I sincerely doubt it. I think everything is driven by emotion, not rationality. And the rational move is, Mr. President, we've got to go back to the drawing board. We have to make sweeping changes. We didn't anticipate what happened. We didn't see this coming. That's why you got to clean out the senior ranks. Goodbye. Thank you very much for your interest in national defense. Put new ones in there. Let's go down a different road. Nobody wants to do that, but here's something else. Can President Trump extricate us? Because I know he'd like to. On my short interaction with him, this is not a man who wanted war with Iran. He did not. He didn't want war with anybody. That was very clear. So what's going on? President Trump is under duress.
Can you expand on that a little? Because I definitely think there's credibility to that, but I'm curious what you're thinking exactly.
Well, I'm afraid to tell you my thinking, so I'll just tell you sort of what I think.
Mm-hmm.
That is that I think he's afraid because he has people around him and people that he knows who could become very angry with him and might precipitate disaster for him. Now, how would that happen? Well, the easiest thing to do is say, Mr. President, you pull out. Your donors, the people that have brought you this far and gotten you where you are, who are enriching you and your family as we speak, we're pulling out. And you're going to be vulnerable to attack by the Hill. There are people over there that want your head. We'll give it to them. We'll replace you. And who are they going to replace him with? Well, they've got Vance. Vance isn't a free agent. He's very much a product of the same structure.
He sure is.
What's Vance going to do? He's going to do what's going on right now. He may try to do something better, but come on. This is not a free, independent actor. He'll do what he's told. So the bottom line is that President Trump must know that. Now that's the soft version. The harder version is, how many times have people tried to kill this man?
Yeah, I know. I've been thinking about that a lot. And I do think whether others find that threat credible or not, it doesn't matter. The question is, does he find that threat credible? And I think he does, especially since there were assassination attempts previously. Now, people will say that has nothing to do with Israel. That's fine, but there have been attempts on his life. And we know that Israel has never been shy about boasting about assassinating people in various countries. I mean, they would brag about assassinating nuclear scientists in Iran. Just nuclear scientists. That's it.
I can assure your audience that no one in Iran tried to kill him. There was never any threat to Donald Trump whatsoever from Iran. That's a lot of nonsense.
I know, yeah. And the Israelis tried to make it appear as though Iran was behind the assassination attempts. There's no evidence of that. So thank you for bringing that up. Colonel Douglas Macgregor, I could talk to you for the full hour, but unfortunately, I'm short on time. I got to go to the next segment. Thank you so much for taking time to talk to me again. I hope you'll be back soon. Thank you. Please tell everyone where they can find your work.
Well, let me thank you, Anna, and also Cenk, for the good work that you do, because you're out there trying to turn up the truth, much like Max Blumenthal and Aaron Mate. We're all dependent on people like you because we're not journalists. I'm not a journalist. I'm a military analyst and like to think I know a little bit about my profession, but you're out there digging up the truth in hard places. You can find me on the Substack. It's called McGregor Warrior Diplomacy. And I think you'd find it interesting. I'm launching a YouTube channel next week with the same name. I'm going to try to put interesting and positive things on there for people. But I wouldn't despair as an American. But we all have to become a lot more engaged. And right now, most of us really are not engaged.
Well, I'm going to work on that. And thank you again. Can't wait for that YouTube channel. So have a wonderful night and we'll see you soon.
Same to you, Anna. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye. All right, everyone. We're going to take a brief break. And when we come back, we're going to get into some more of the news of the day. In fact, one of the things I want to talk a little bit about is the Daily Wire's failure seems to be rewarded. In fact, it might be might have an initial public offering soon. I want to get to the details of that and more when we come back. Don't miss it. What's up, everyone? I really hope you enjoyed that interview. And I gotta say, like, I really, really appreciate these guys going out of their way to do YouTube shows, YouTube interviews, share their expertise, write about what give us an inside look, right? Because I don't want to be one of these morons who's like, oh yeah, the military should do X, Y, and Z. I'm not a military expert. So like, let's talk to people who actually know what we are capable of doing, what's going on with our weapons stockpile. Anyway, he's just a voice that I really, really appreciate. Thank you to CMAD for purchasing an annual membership. We've got Bloated Ego since Donnie wants to attend and present the trophy to the World Cup champion. Wouldn't it be great to see Iran win the World Cup? Probably wouldn't happen, but by the way, those Iranian soccer players, what's going on? Like, what is going on? Okay. I mean, those sanctions can't be too bad because homeboys look like they be eating real good, if you know what I mean. I'm sorry for perving out, but they're really good looking guys. I'll read more of your comments when we come back. Welcome to our new members. We've got Mad Movies Man and Joan Wagner. You guys are amazing. I hope you guys enjoy our bonus episode tonight. It will be behind a paywall, so if you are not a member, you won't be able to see it. If you want to become a member though, tyt.com/join. You can also become a member by hitting that join button on YouTube. Also, before I forget, tonight after the bonus episode, if you head on over to the TYT Twitch channel, you can watch Happy Half Hour with Brett Ehrlich. It's a fun show. It's a light, easygoing show, which is what we can all really take in right now because of all the heavy news. Twitch.tv/TYT. I'm sorry, it's twitch.tv.tyt. Twitch.tv.tyt. All right, I'll read a few comments and then we'll move on. All right, we've got Green New Dealer Dragon who says, I think we should forget about AOC. She attached herself to Mama Bear like a newborn cub suckling at the establishment teat. Strong words, but I look, I can't disagree with what you're saying. I think it's demonstrably true, but I think the way that we should treat our politicians is as politicians, right? So they signed up to work for us. If they renege on their promises, then we should hold them accountable. And that's they are not our friends. I think that's the most important thing to keep in mind. And by the way, I'm saying this for myself, because I used to think of it in a tribal way. I have these parasocial friendships with these politicians that we helped get elected. No, at the end of the day, they're human beings, they're people, and they're politicians who respond to incentives and disincentives. If we don't disincentivize betraying us, then they will betray us. You get what I'm saying? If we believe that they are our friends and we must be loyal to them no matter what, then there is no incentive for them to keep their promises. That's all I want to say about it. All right, the interview went a little long. I don't want to skip the other break, because we've been doing that a lot lately. So why don't we just take our last break, and when we come back, mega block for you. Don't miss it. Back in the day, there was this Obama era program to get these vehicles, these old vehicles that were not fuel efficient, they were polluting the air, to get them off the roads and incentivize Americans to buy newer, cleaner vehicles. The program under the Obama administration was called Cash for Clunkers. And I couldn't help but think about Cash for Clunkers when I found out that Ben Shapiro is looking to take the failure that has become the Daily Wire and potentially take it public, an IPO, if you will. So we don't know if he's going to end up getting rewarded for failure, but it wouldn't be surprising to see a Zionist and American get rewarded for failure. I mean, just look at Barry Weiss. With that in mind, let's give you the details to the story. No?
It's a social break still.
Oh. I'm an idiot, guys. I'm a total idiot. Okay, hold on. I was still reading comments. Damn, that was a pretty good lead up to the story, Alyssa. Can we just include that in the final product? Okay, sorry. All right, I'm gonna read some more comments and then we'll go. Abby Normal says, didn't they have a majority vote and it automatically goes into effect in 10 days with or without Trump's signature? Abby, yes, you probably wrote that in before I got to that part of the story. But if Trump doesn't sign the legislation in 2 weeks, it becomes law. Unless he vetoes it. So we have to wait and see what ends up happening. Samore Championes says Mossad works for the Mossad. He does, actually, absolutely, yeah. Welcome back to the show, everyone. Let's get right to our next story. So you might have heard, but the Daily Wire has been hemorrhaging subscribers, and that has led to a round of layoffs over at the company. But it does appear as though Ben Shapiro could be awarded for his failures with a $100 million investment, regardless of how unpopular his programming is. Now, the Daily Wire, which was founded by Ben Shapiro back in 2015, made its pitch to investors by essentially highlighting the last year the company grossed $48 million in revenue. It's a lot of money. However, the Daily Wire's subscription base, especially its paid subscription base, has been shrinking considerably. And Ben recently got caught attempting to manipulate view counts on his videos by submitting his videos to YouTube as ads. So like an entire video of his would play as pre-roll ads on other people's content, and that would increase the view count of Ben's videos, which is, don't do that. That's so embarrassing. Like you're gonna get caught and it's gonna be embarrassing. And he did get caught and it is embarrassing. But nonetheless, let's take a look at the hard data here, okay? So take a look at the loss of the Daily Wire's paid subscription base, okay? So 3/4 of the Daily Wire's revenue actually comes from paid subscribers. And within a year, those numbers have actually dropped by 1/3, bringing it down to approximately 850,000 people, which I'm just gonna keep it 100. That is still a lot of paid subscribers. So like, I'm not going to allow my dislike of the messaging coming out of the Daily Wire to make me argue that like there are total failures and it's going under any minute now. No. You've got 850,000 people paying to watch your programming. That's pretty impressive still, even though you're hemorrhaging paid subscribers. But ad revenue ain't looking too good. So let's take a look at this next one. So ad revenue serves as about 20% of the Daily Wire's revenue, and that has also dropped continuously since 2022. Gee, I wonder why, what's going on here? Now, the Daily Wire's bread and butter has always been culture war nonsense, which I think most Americans left and right had been conditioned to be very obsessed with for a long time. And I thought, we're never gonna break free from the shackles of like identitarianism, the right wingers, like insisting on making transgender issues a wedge issue. Like, can we please focus on like the stuff that's tearing the country apart? The affordability issues, the housing crisis, healthcare is a disaster. When are we gonna finally focus on how terrible our foreign policy is for our own country, right? Like, we need to fix these things. I think after October 7th, 2023, and everything that has come after that in regard to Israel's conduct, US foreign policy and response, it has woken many people throughout the country up to what the reality is. That these wedge issues, that these social issues, the issues that the Daily Wire focuses on for its bread and butter are not as important as doing something about our broken political system, the corruption in our political system, and yeah, our foreign policy. We got to rein that in big time. And so that is not conducive to the type of environment where a network like the Daily Wire would thrive, which is why they're losing viewership. There's no question. Now, the Daily Wire has been collaborating with something known as High Mount Capital to potentially lead a funding round that would value the company at $750 million. Semaphore wrote a piece on this, and I'm going to read a few relevant excerpts for you. They say that High Mount, which was founded by two former Koch Industries employees, has been helping the Daily Wire to shop around the investment to at least 4 other firms, including 2 strategic investors. Now, the company's bankers said it had fielded buyout offers above $1 billion, but that the Daily Wire's founders prefer to take a minority aligned investment to grow the business. So they're not looking to sell it per se, and that's according to the documents that were reviewed by Semaphore. Those bankers said a $2 billion initial public offering could be achievable within approximately 18 months. So they might take the Daily Wire public. Okay, so the Daily Wire, which was once heralded as like the next frontier in conservative media, has been besieged by a host of controversies lately, I mean, we've talked about a lot of them, but most notably, there was the very public and vicious breakup with Candace Owens. She was fired after she called the genocide in Gaza a genocide. Apparently, that was a bridge too far for Ben Shapiro, so they got rid of her. Shapiro, who's an avowed Zionist, of course, also targeted fellow conservatives like Megyn Kelly, Sean Ryan, Tucker Carlson, because he doesn't feel they're adequately pro-Israel enough. And that hasn't really been great for his network. And then Shapiro's unequivocal support for Israel is also causing problems for him because more and more people are waking up to the reality of Israel serving as a detriment to this country, to our country, that the alliance with Israel is really not beneficial for the American people. But it really, all of this, all of his takes, all of his messaging, what Ben Shapiro actually cares about really puts him at odds with most Americans and large swaths of conservatives as well. And remember, if you're trying to appeal to conservatives, and conservatives, especially young conservatives, are moving away from Israel, your business model ain't gonna work out for you. And that's really what's going on here. So the Daily Wire's sudden fall from grace might not be solely related to the company misreading the room on Israel, though. So in a memo, High Mount ascribes some of the company's recent struggles to an epic medieval scripted series, The Pendragon Cycle, that did not fully resonate with the core Daily Wire audience and consumed the majority of the 2025 content budget, leaving fewer resources for new programming that could drive subscriber acquisition and marketing. The Daily Wire spent $50 million on that film. That was a David Boring thing. He left the company shortly after that massive failure. Oof. You guys don't know what it's like to work at TYT, but like, if anyone in the company spent $50 million on literally anything, there would be no recovering from that. There just would never be a way to recover from that. But anyway, let's move on. So now that Jeremy Boring is gone, in his absence, the company has sought to basically restructure the Daily Wire to make it more attractive to investors. And as part of that restructuring, Shapiro has agreed to take less pay for his podcast and instead have more equity in the company. The Daily Wire also plans to hire 5 emerging talents to produce podcasts and social media content. The memo also said that the company will increase its editorial investment to $6.4 million a year from $2.4 million and boost headcount to 67 from 22 as it expands beyond politics into breaking news. I love the investigative journalism, national security, business, sports, health, and opinion. Now, this is what they're claiming in order to attract investors. Now, whether the Daily Wire is able to secure the capital necessary is yet to be seen. I'm pretty sure that there are some Zionists with deep pockets who are looking to save Shapiro, so I wouldn't be surprised. But I am really curious to see how this shakes out. At the end of the day, your media venture is not going to succeed unless the message resonates with the people. And with Ben at the helm, someone who insists on pushing Zionist propaganda, pro-Israel propaganda, I think we're done with Israel. I think, especially when you look at young people, both left and right, we're done with Israel. So you got to move away from that. But Ben Shapiro doesn't have the capacity to do that. So I'm curious to see how this all plays out. But that's what they're planning because it seems like they're looking for a strategy to kind of make lemonade out of a lemon. Anyway, let's move on to our next story. I want to talk about the Rogan podcast and what Tim Dillon had to say on it. So without further ado, take a look at this.
But I do think there's a fair question to ask about what is the motive of certain massive big donors? Is the motive the strength and prosperity of America, or is it the strength and prosperity of Israel? That's a fair question.
Yeah. And what about the rest of the world? Like, how much are we putting ourselves at odds with the rest of the world?
A lot. A lot, Joe. We are putting ourselves at odds with the rest of the world. A lot. But as you can see, one of my favorite comedians, Tim Dillon, if not my favorite, I mean, you should watch his Saturday program every Saturday because he does not hold back. And he somehow manages to make the dumpster fire we're all living in and living through pretty funny. But nonetheless, Tim Dillon was on Joe Rogan's podcast and they talked about issues that I like to talk about, like to think about, and that is Israel's influence on our political system, on our politicians, and the wars that we have been fighting on behalf of our special ally. So without further ado, let's go to the next clip. I'm very curious. I haven't seen these myself. I'm watching for the first time along with many of you. But in this next clip, Tim Dillon talks about Israel first, what their real interests are, and whether they represent American interests.
It's clearly not in the interest of the United States to be in a Middle Eastern war with Iran. Tons of Jewish people don't believe it is. Lots of, people from all walks of life don't believe it, but there's an ideological group of people that donate a lot of money and that are incredibly powerful, and they are really pushing this. They're pushing troops and they're pushing nukes. Yeah. They're like, or unconventional weapons, like crazy bombing campaigns. They're pushing troops on the ground. They don't care what it takes. Iran has to be either completely destroyed or it's just got to be a chaos zone. But for the regional ambitions of Israel, it can't exist. So, I mean, again, and not in a paranoid conspiratorial way, because I don't like the victim stuff either, as a bunch of people in America being like, I can't get ahead because Jewish people are successful. I think that's a stupid road to go down. That's a victim road. I hate that. But I do think there's a fair question to ask about what is the motive of certain massive big donors.
I mean, look, that question is, I think, deeper than we've even addressed on this show. And I think the reason why people are hesitant to address it is because it's uncomfortable to blame Americans here in America of not giving a damn about the country they're in and just being here in order to fund politicians and pressure politicians to do what's best for Israel, even if it's not in the best interest of the United States. But I do think that's what some of these donors are doing. That is what they're doing. Okay, so Larry Ellison is the single largest donor to the Israeli Defense Forces. Larry Ellison just bought TikTok. Larry Ellison's son just bought CBS and CNN. Why? Because they're so interested in journalism? Like they really want to improve journalism in America? No, because they want to spread pro-Israel propaganda through these platforms, which are slowly but surely dying. And I'm happy to see that. I hope that continues. I don't want to see people lose their jobs, but if you're just going to be a platform that provides propaganda for a foreign country, I've got no interest in you. Get the hell out. I want you to fail. But anyway, putting that aside, yeah, there are donors here, like the Adelsons. Miriam Adelson's husband is on camera giving a speech discussing how his biggest regret is that he fought in the US military, not the IDF. Like, get the F out of my country. I mean, he's dead now. But like at that time, and especially Miriam Adelson, like, why are you here? And that's what I want to like really get people to ask themselves. These people do not value the United States. They don't value our country. Why are they here? Are they just here to behave as operatives on behalf of Israel? Because literally what they're advocating for screws us over. It screws this country over. Anyway, let's go to the next clip.
The thing that drives me crazy is the negotiators. When they get negotiators, then they wind up whacking them.
They kill all the negotiators.
And
They're
then
killing
Trump
the
tells
Iran
them,
deal.
stop killing the negotiators.
Yeah, and I mean,
stop bombing Lebanon.
Is this Iran deal going to work? Is it going to work? Stop bombing Lebanon. I think we're at odds now. We're in the last 2 years. We're at odds with Israel for the first time, where Trump is really at odds with them, and he's had enough. And I think he is starting to understand that his legacy will be permanently tainted if he doesn't find a way to extricate us from this war. Well, to say that this was not in the interest, this was in America's interest, you have to jump around logically so much.
Well, this is also the problem with the justification of what happened in Gaza. When people will try to say Israel, like Gad was saying, they're doing the best they can. Like, look at the drone footage. Fly over that. If that's the best you can do, that's crazy. Like, it's better. Is that better than a nuke? Because I don't think it is. It's it's
inhumane.
It looks like the damage of a nuke just spread out over 2 years instead of one blast.
Look, these are all things that have been said on this show over and over and over again. And so I'm not going to belabor it and repeat, the same commentary that I've been talking about on the show. But I will say this. Over the last several months, especially, I've been pretty disappointed in the way Joe Rogan has chosen to, if ever, talk about what's going on in the Middle East. Now, prior to him getting a little closer to the Trump contingent, the JD Vances, the Peter Thiels, that crowd, he was pretty aggressive in condemning the behavior of the Israeli government, certainly in other instances of warfare. I remember when he had, he had all sorts of people on his show on a regular basis who would consistently, Abby Martin's a perfect example, who would talk about Israel. They wouldn't pull their punches. Rogan would engage. And then he had Theo Vaughn on, and Theo Vaughn is pouring his heart out about what he sees, and I agree with him entirely, as this evil force in the Middle East right now, and how terrifying it is that, these individuals seem to have a firm grasp, or they're totally controlling members of Congress, the executive branch. And by control, what I'm talking about is through corruption, through money, through the Israel lobby. And I feel like he was totally dismissed in that podcast episode with Joe Rogan. So I don't know what Joe Rogan actually believes. He's sitting in front of Tim Dillon. Tim Dillon knows what he's talking about. And in this case, he seems like he's in agreement. But is he really in agreement? Because I don't know. In other instances, it seems like he wants to kind of back away from the discussion. He doesn't want to talk about it. People who don't want to talk about what's happening right now, I don't understand you, because this is the biggest issue of our time right now. We are complicit in genocide, ethnic cleansing, not just in Gaza, but now also in Lebanon. We are shelling out all this money, all this weaponry that's making us weaker in order to help Israel carry out crimes against humanity. This is our biggest issue right now. These wars are what drove us into national debt. All these other issues, there are other issues that are important, don't get me wrong. But this is the issue of our time, and we have to address it. We need all hands on deck. And if your friendship with Peter Thiel is more important, people are going to start turning on you, bro. So make a decision and stick to it. We've got a lot more clips, actually, and I want to get to them. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to head on over to our members only bonus episode. We'll play some more of these clips. And if we have time, get to some more of these stories that I prepped. It's going to be a good time. TYT.com/join to become a member, and we'll see you there.